Hello there, friends. My name is Scott Wakefield. I'm the lead pastor from First Christian Church of Greene County, and I am here with
Chris Oakes.
and we are going to have a coffee convo. That's
Water.
That's good. That's good. So is mine. We're having a water convo. So glad you're here with us to get to know Chris a little bit, talk about life and ministry, and get to know you a little better. So this is an opportunity for us to hear about the work of God in your life, and so we'll get there. But first, let's start with some important questions, like what's your favorite kind of tree species?
Well, there's 7 or 8 that I'm fairly fond of. But the one that rises to the top nearly perpetually is the oak.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
The
That's
oak.
good. That's good. Which of our staff members do you think asked that question?
That would be the campus pastor in Greenville,
That would be.
Mr. Tyson Hodge.
I don't actually know that was the case, that Tyson asked that question, but I would bet as much money as you would. A lot.
I'd put a lot down.
Yeah, I would too.
For sure.
Clarify for us, by the way, how you spell the word Oaks in terms of your name.
Oakes is spelled with an E.
Yeah.
I'm proud of my E, just like Greenville is proud of our E.
Nice.
So Oakes.
Yeah.
I just found out today that someone fraudulently submitted an unemployment claim to the state of Tennessee for Chris Oakes without an E.
Ooh.
I'm like, well, that's pretty easy to defend. They don't even know how to spell my name.
Nice. We are coming off of someone fraudulently purchasing an $80,000 car with our information. It's going to be easy to prove that wasn't us. Look at our vehicles. We do not drive a
Is there an $80,000 minivan?
The Chrysler Pacifica hybrid thing that gets like 1 million miles to the
80?
gallon.
Is it 80?
It's like 70.
Okay.
Yeah. But, yeah, we don't drive a Dodge Hellcat 700 horsepower or whatever it is. Dodge Charger, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So tell us, Chris, about your childhood, upbringing. How'd you get to today? Where have you lived in life? How did you meet your wife? How many kids do you have? How much do you love your family? All those good things.
Wow.
Do all that in like 3 to 4 minutes, if you would.
Okay. Born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. And a good, solid, fundamental Christian home. Church 4 to 5 times a week from 8 days old. And mom and dad who are solid in the faith and have been since their teenage years.
Cool.
Mom longer than that. I pretty much had that idealistic childhood. Not because I was shielded, just because mom and dad had stable jobs, church was stable, everything. We were just very blessed. Decided my senior year of college, felt like God was calling me to a different road than I thought. I'd applied to liberal arts college and been accepted, but as my senior year went along, I felt like I was being called to some kind of ministry, didn't know what.
Yeah.
Applied to a Bible college within our organization at the time and got accepted there. Small college of about 300 called Indiana Bible College in Indianapolis. And so I took off there and spent 3.5 years completing my bachelor's degree there.
Cool.
And wound up kind of co-majoring in education and theology. And when I got out of school, I was accidentally, on purpose, led to by the Spirit to a church in just outside of Cleveland, Ohio, in a town called Elyria, and spent 1.5 years there as youth pastor. And also, they hired me as youth pastor and said, "But by the way, we also need you to teach in our school."
Ah, yes.
So I got there.
That's right.
Spent the first 5 months teaching 9th through 12th grade sciences, including physics.
Dude.
I hate science.
Wow.
Hated it then. Still do not like. I don't disapprove of it. I just don't like it myself. And
I don't disapprove.
spent the next full school year teaching English. I was given the opportunity to pick what I would rather teach, and my dad was an English teacher for
After the
27
first year,
years.
they were like, how about these other options for you?
Yeah, and I couldn't take math, which was the easiest for me, so I took English, which was the next easiest and the most interesting. So I actually had fun for a year teaching English, but the biggest problem with that was the school was a private school that accepted almost anybody who walked through the doors in order to keep tuition at a level that could pay. And so we ended up with a lot of hard case students for which most of us were not prepared.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting and very challenging.
Sure.
But at the end of the year and a half, because of that and a couple other things, I decided to move on. Spent a year teaching and doing youth ministry in West Tennessee with some old friends who were pastors, old friends of my mom and dad's. And in West Tennessee, in a little town called Henderson, in a little place on the outskirts of the town called Jacks Creek, is where I happened upon Crystal. And she and I began dating. She was 18. She jokes that she was one of my students. She was not.
How old were you when she was 18 and you started?
I was 23.
Nice.
And
nice.
so I am 4 years and 11 months older than my wife, but we dated for a while, broke up for a while, got back together, got engaged on Christmas Day in 1999, and were married on March 18th in 2000. So we had a 3-month engagement, but we had already dated on and off for a year and a half. So
cool.
That's how we got together.
In the church where you were at the time? Was that how? Or
Well, I met her in the church. She was coming out of the youth group into the young adults when I showed up there.
Gotcha.
So for that year I was there. We dated, and then I moved to Middle Tennessee to become a youth pastor for a friend of mine that I had met in Elyria, who was from Tennessee originally. And then after we got married, she joined me there. We were there for 3.5 years. Both worked for banks. I did ministry, worked for a newspaper for a year. That was the most interesting, fun, but very low-paying job I've ever had. And then after 3.5 years, we felt God calling us to pastor, so that's what brought us to Greenville. And I pastored for 7.5 years after I moved to Greenville. So never been in full-time ministry per se as far as preaching goes. It's always been subsidized either by teaching or newspaper or banking.
Bivo in some sense, yeah.
Yes.
Bivo being the cool way that people say bivocational, in case you're not tracking those of y'all.
I am not cool. I've never said that.
You've never said bivo?
I've never said bivo.
That's what the cool ministry people are saying. So tell us about your kids. What are they doing?
Kids, we had Crystal gave birth to Cademan in September of 2003. 2 months later is when we moved to Greenville. My only certain income moving to Greenville was $200 a week from the church.
Nice.
Then in January, I hired on at Andrew Johnson Bank, where I'm still employed to this day, vice president there, and love the community bank and love its participation within the community. So Cademan has only known Greenville. And then 4 years later, Kate was born, and of course, she's only known Greenville. So they've grown up. Cademan graduated from Greenville High School last May and is currently in his second semester, starting today at Tennessee Tech University in Cookeville.
Nice.
And Kate is in her second semester as a freshman at Greenville High School and afraid she's going to completely drop it all this semester. But she's not, because she's very good at being a student.
Cool.
And I love my wife and children tremendously.
Yeah, that was part of the question, wasn't
Inexplicably, humongously.
That's really descriptive. Thank you.
I'm working on all the adjectives possible.
Yes. I think adverbs, because they're LYs.
Sorry.
Yeah. So it was an adverb, inexplicably.
I did add the LYs. But I didn't have a verb to go, love. So, okay, it works.
What are we referring back to, and what's the direct object? And can we diagram? Kids don't do diagramming of sentences anymore, I don't think. So we have lots of questions about you. Let's talk ministry. Let's talk life groups. Let's
Okay.
talk other things too eventually here. But we got lots of questions from some peeps. Like, you've gone on several cruises.
Several. We just got back from our 6th.
Sixth?
Yes.
Man, you guys are becoming experts, kind of.
We've done it.
You
a
know
time
what
or
to
two.
do.
Yeah.
What company and destination would you recommend?
Our favorite. It's a hard question to answer. It's hard to vote against Disney. It's also hard to afford Disney.
Yes.
So, with that being the understood,
Okay.
if you have lots of money and you've already given first and saved second,
Right. And now this is the live on
and
the rest
so
part.
you have lots to live on,
Right. This is the live on the rest part.
then
Yes, thank you.
Disney is very good, especially if you have kids.
Yeah.
But even if you don't, it's just they maximize the user experience.
I've heard it's phenomenal for a family.
So we've only done it once, and
Cool.
we found a deal. It was essentially half price, and so we were able to do that. It was 2014, so our kids were at that point in time 7 and 11,
Cool.
and it was like the perfect.
Oh, yeah.
However, our last 3 as a family,
Uh-huh.
not counting one that Crystal and I took for our 20th anniversary, but our last 3 as a family have been on Royal Caribbean, and we've pretty much settled on Royal as the cruise ship
The Oaks Cruise
that
Line.
is worth going on.
Okay.
And we've had 3 really good experiences the last 3 times.
How many miles have you run in your life?
in my
And why is this
life.
question being asked? Tell us that.
2012, I got more interested in my health because my mom's side of the family has a history of heart issues. My dad's side of the family has a history of diabetes. And so, being the logical thinker that I am, said, what can I do that will help minimize both of those together? One thing
One thing.
to minimize both
Yeah.
of those.
Yeah.
And the fairly obvious answer was some kind of cardio. And the most inexpensive cardio that there is walking and or running. We'll say jogging. And so one day in 2012, I went out. We lived on a dead-end road that from stop sign to dead end was 0.2 miles exactly. So I said, well, we can make laps out of this. And I started running one morning and didn't make it to the stop sign before stopping and thinking, I'm not going to survive this. But I stuck with it, timed myself because I was running with an iPod, did not yet have a smartphone,
Yeah.
and did that for a summer and into the fall. And then that fall got an iPhone for free from somewhere and started using the Couch to 5K app
Yeah.
and slowly progressed
Cool.
in between thinking I was going to die
Yes.
to being able to run for 30 plus minutes,
Yeah.
which covered 5K. And since then, have tried to run 4 to 5 times a week. Injuries have kept me from doing that sometimes. Up until a few years ago, the cold kept me from doing that in the winter.
Yeah.
So I would shut it down in November, pick it back up in March. But then I did figure out they actually make clothes that help with
Yeah,
that.
that's good. That's helpful. That's good.
So, for the most part, you can find me running
And
the
being a
sidewalks.
logical and efficient and or something else I was going to say about you that we've learned about Chris Oakes in this running thing. But being a logical person, you purchase clothing that would help.
Yes. So basically, I Monday, Tuesday, rest on Wednesday, maybe Thursday, Friday, and I love a good slow Saturday morning jog. And I have learned not to do Sunday mornings because it makes me fall asleep during church, which isn't ideal for someone who's on staff at the church. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
try to do
Thank you.
4 to 5 times a
Doing
week,
your part.
ideally. And my normal run is 5K. Sometimes I try to get a little bit more than that.
Cool.
But my knees don't always allow it. How much I've run? My best year, I have no clue what I've run overall.
Yeah.
But my best year was about 720 in 2020.
That's pretty
And
good
that
clip.
was cutting it off in Thanksgiving because of an injury that took about 4 months to recover from.
All right. Speed round. We got lots of other questions.
All right.
Coffee or tea and why?
tea, never coffee, sweet, but decaf.
Okay. Eggs or bacon, and why? And I don't know why that has to be an or question, but eggs or bacon, and why?
If I have to choose, it's eggs.
Okay.
But I love the taste of bacon.
Who does not love a good pig? How do you like your eggs?
Typically sunny side up.
Wrong answer. Okay. Scrambled, well done, destroy them.
If you say
rubber.
scrambled, then you're absolutely mistaken.
I am as boring as they come. As an eater,
If you can't see white in your eggs,
No.
you have done it incorrectly.
blah. I went yellow, destroy them. Actually, a little bit of brown because they're rubbery. Apples or oranges, and why?
That's hard. I can't do oranges because they mess with my digestive system, so I don't do those too often. So I'm going to have to say apples. And if there's a good Honeycrisp apple around, I will go after it.
Honeycrisp is good
If it's
stuff.
just a regular red or green, it will be hard for
yeah.
me to take.
Yeah. John of Gold is pretty good.
Bananas
Honeycrisp is
are typically my choice of fruit.
Yeah, I do a banana
You
just
know
about
why?
every morning.
You can get like 8 of them for $1.30 or something. So
Yes.
it's efficient.
If we haven't learned anything about Chris Oakes yet, we should learn that is
Go all out on vacations and
eat bananas.
really thrifty.
Eat
the rest
bananas
of
so you
the
can go
time.
on
Yeah.
cruises. Tell us about you as a kid. What were you like? What profession did you aspire to? Were you squirrely?
People ask that question.
Were you studious?
That's a fairly
Were
common
you-
question that people ask, books ask, and I would say my earliest memory of wanting to be something would be an engineer,
Really?
but that's not right. I mean, I went to engineering school in between my junior and senior year of high school. I went to engineering camp, I guess it was called, for
Yeah.
a week. But
that
I had to have wanted something earlier than that, but I just don't know.
fireman.
Maybe a Kentucky basketball player, but that didn't pay, so. Well, it didn't legally pay.
Moving on. What's your favorite thing about being on staff with church people, being in ministry, etc.?
Well, I was trying to see if I could answer 15 different times and include 15 names of staffers. But definitely the relationships is my favorite thing. Relationships with other staffers that are trying to figure out God and ministry and people and love and community.
Yeah.
So that by far is the most exciting part. And then to get to have the moments, which aren't all the time, but are often enough to keep you going, the moments where you get to be a part of placing, I get to be a part of placing somebody in connection with somebody else, and it clicks, and they become friends and become mentors or accountability partners or whatever context that they click in which they can grow in that community.
Yeah.
Is why I do what I do.
Yeah. We will definitely loop back around to that. What's your favorite biblical topic?
Biblical topic.
Jesus.
I'm going to say Jesus, but I think the answer is
Beaver.
That's
That's an old
I would
joke.
say my favorite thing to talk about are the stories. I am not, and this is probably where you and I are a little bit different. I am not a huge fan of Paul's writings because they get so technical and so legal and so argumentative in the true sense of that word. I would much rather spend an hour talking about a parable of Jesus or even an Old Testament story. I love narrative. I love story. I love how the arc of stories in Scripture are often fall into the different books I've read about how stories work, how even movies, films, novels work. And so I find that intriguing. It gets my brain going.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times, like especially in the parables, but most narrative in Scripture, the point is related to how the story goes. Yeah. It's good stuff. Best place to eat in Nashville.
I guess go to
Your
Nashville.
favorite place, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's really hard to choose the best. I would say recently, the best meal Crystal and I have had in Nashville was at a place called Urban Grub.
Okay.
We went in. I'd heard a lot about it. We just hadn't gone. I hadn't gone on my own, and then she accompanies me sometimes. And so we went 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago now. And
what kind of food?
they have, well, it's pretty much lots of kinds of meat.
Yeah.
So I got a pork chop
already.
that was 2 or more inches thick.
Dang.
And the only thing that concerned me was she said, "Do you want that warm pink as with chef's recommendation?" And I was like, "Not really, but if he recommends it, I'm gonna trust him on that." So it was a little bit pink, not too much, but a little bit pink. But it was wonderful. Crystal got a type of fish I can't remember exactly, and we could not eat.
Urban Grub?
Urban Grub
All right.
is wonderful.
Cool.
But probably my favorite place in Nashville right now is Martin's Barbecue.
Martin's Barbecue.
Yeah. We just don't have a good full-time, let me prep, a good full-time barbecue place in Greenville right now. So we have some part-time places, but full-time place. And Martin's Barbecue, interestingly enough, the guy hails from West Tennessee and does a Jack's Creek sauce, which is where my wife comes from. Jack's Creek, affectionately known as Jack's Crack. And so,
Okay.
yeah. So I like to go to Martin's. It's a little bit expensive, but it's worth it because they have stuff that you can't get around here.
Yeah. Cool.
Love Nashville.
Yeah. And you're in Nashville oftentimes because of bank stuff and
Bank takes me there 2 or 3 times a year at least, and then we usually end up there. Since Crystal's folks live in West Tennessee, sometimes we meet up in Nashville.
Gotcha. Cool.
Which is really nice because my father-in-law pays when we do that.
Boom.
Thank you, Dad.
See you next weekend, Dad. So
Actually, it's this weekend,
okay.
but not in Nashville.
No?
No, we're going all the way to West Tennessee.
What book are you currently reading? You're a reader.
Did you say book?
Book. What book are you currently reading?
Book.
Book. Or books.
There we go.
Are you
All right.
currently reading?
I'm trying to limit myself to 3 at a time this year.
It's good.
So
good.
far, it's borderline not working, but I'm trying. The books I am currently reading, Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self.
Nice.
Not doing real well on that one so far.
It's thick.
That's been hard. I'm trying to read a book called Everyday Vitality, which is not from a Christian perspective, but has some interesting, just kind of general life and stress and anxiety tips.
Okay.
I'm 3/4 of the way through a book called The Doors of the Sea, which was written by a guy named David Bentley Hart, and it was kind of his explanation after the tsunami of 2004 in how to explain evil in the context of the Christian God. And
Rise and Triumph with Modern Self is probably no more difficult than David Bentley Hart.
it's just about 7 times longer. So, therefore,
True
why
story.
I'm only 20
sure.
or 30 pages into Carl Trueman versus Hart. And let's see, the other one, I've been listening to a leadership book called Day One. This is Day One, which is one of the better books, leadership books that I've read recently.
What's the gist there?
Every day is day one. He says he leads with a story about a safari guide that when he was in Africa that introduced himself, and they got into the buggy and were riding these sand dunes, and the guy was taking it in crazy, scary fashion. And he said, "How long have you been doing this?" And he said, "This is my first day." And the guy freaks out, and then he stops the buggy, the dune buggy, and says, "Actually, I've been doing this for 7 years, and I own the company now. But you want somebody who
Who's
treats
doing
this like day one, because their whole desire is to please the customer. Their whole desire is to get it right." And he said, "Think about it. When you show up at day one at a job, you want to You want to take care. You want to look your best. You want to work your best, your
Yeah.
hardest.
You're
everything.
approaching it like you're learning things, and
And so this is day one. Is every day is day one. He also refers,
good.
little region plug
yeah.
here. He also refers to the fact that he is, I believe, the author's 10 years sober, but that every day, it doesn't matter
Right.
how many days he has behind him. This is day one. This is the day that matters. And so in the context of that, the way he brings that out over the course of the book is you have to define your values and then build questions out of your values that you can answer, not just yes or no, but with a specific thing. So he defines one of his values, one of his most important values, as influence.
Okay.
And the way what I really like about it is, instead of just kind of generally asking himself at the end of every day about influence, the question he came up with some of his students was, how did I recognize someone else's leadership today? Because he knows if I do that, I'm influencing.
Yep.
And so the question is cannot. He says the question cannot have the value in it. That you
The question cannot have the
If
value
your value is
in the
influence,
question.
you can't have influence in the question.
Right.
You have to define it specifically enough where it's an action that you take that leads to the value that you have described.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is day one. Little plug for it. It's several years old, but I found it to be very helpful in kind of narrowing down some of the questions I asked myself to make sure I'm doing what's most important to me.
Yeah. So, here at First Christian Church, what's most important to you, other than obviously your own family and your own personal development and growth spiritually, is life groups. So
And making Scott proud.
Of course. So tell us about, in generic terms, what your role is, what you do, and how you're becoming a day one thinker about life group. I'm just kidding. And we'll piggyback off of all that and go from there.
It does feel like every day is day one.
What does that mean?
for a multitude of reasons.
What does that mean?
But 2017, we started coming full-time to FCC after some ministry work I'd done in Knoxville. And so I jumped in pretty quick to help and be a part of the conversations around life groups.
Yeah.
And then in 2018, you and the elders asked me to come on staff part-time. And so I agreed to that. And so since then, I've been director of life groups at First Christian Church. So I'm entering my 5th year of that. And lots of highs, a few lows, but lots of highs. I think overall, we've done a good job of getting life groups at least thought of as a foundational aspect of what we do.
Sure.
And who we are
Yeah.
at First Christian Church.
Theoretically.
Yes.
Yes.
In reality, as with many places, the hard parts we run into is plenty of people have such busy schedules that they are hesitant to commit to a weekly life group. What I would like for everybody to know and try to say as often as I can. In fact, just yesterday, talked with someone at the Efton campus, and this couple had, during the week, rejected my invitation to be a part of Leadership Life Group, and then followed up with me yesterday morning, making sure that I got their rejection notice. And then after the service came to me and began to speak, and I said, it's conviction. That's what you're feeling, and I'm glad that you're responding to it. So I am not above using the conviction / guilt.
Conviction
if
sounds
it
good.
works. Conviction argument to try to get people to realize how important community is.
Yeah.
And that particular couple, you know who you are, that particular couple actually is going to be a part of the Leadership Life Group. They're just going to have to miss this first week.
Gotcha.
And we'll talk about what Leadership Life Group is in just a second. But
Yes.
as a whole, a lot of people undersell the value of community to themselves and think, well, I've got some friends and I go to church on Sunday and I've got these loose connections.
Yeah.
But to really have community that's going to, A, be there to surround you in the ups and downs of your life, be there to hold you accountable in your walk with God and ask hard questions and do the hard prayers that come along with what it means to be a person in the world, a parent, a spouse, a Christian in a secular culture. All of those things. A lot of times gets undersold, and busy schedules are not a good enough reason to not do community in some form or fashion.
Especially not when
regular.
those busy schedules are often filled with other things that are not going to hold us accountable, are not going to build relationships that we actually need much more than we think, are not going to push us to a place of personal spiritual growth. Not that everybody's busyness is filled up with nothing but bad things. I'm not saying that. Neither are you. We're all busy in some form or fashion.
I would definitely say do those things and do community. And if those things are keeping you from community, then you question.
Yes.
But figure out a way to do community and those things.
It's a big rock that has to be in there first. As you were talking and saying something about people thinking about how, like, oh, I've got these connections and these friends at church and I see them here and I serve with them in that way, but I'm not in a life group. I think most folks have an experience in the body and in church world where they don't have much in the way of friends, really. They have people with whom they are friendly. And a little bit of that here and there is all they get, is all they have. And a lot of folks don't actually have much in the way of real community and friends. And that's just not going to happen if you're not doing it on a regular basis. It's not going to happen. Sunday mornings is not remotely close to enough for that to be the case. When there are 150 people in the building at every service, it's just not going to happen.
No. That is not true, deep spiritual community.
Right. Yeah, which is what we see throughout the entire Bible, but especially in the New Testament.
Especially.
With God's people getting together.
So let me throw in Leadership Life Group because this week we actually start on Thursday. We start a Leadership Life Group. Haven't been able to do one for a couple years, a lot because of COVID.
Yeah.
But if everybody's able to show up, and we're crossing our fingers for that because of the way things are going and it being January. But if everybody's able to show up, especially by the second or third week, we'll have about 14 people.
Awesome.
And
so
we're hoping and praying that leads into several new groups.
Yeah.
The Leadership Life Group is a 6-week, every Thursday night session or meeting and session every Thursday night that just defines and describes what life groups look like and what life group leadership entails. There's not a lot of hefty requirements.
Right.
The primary requirements we say for life group leaders are you pray for your people on a daily basis, you connect with them as much as possible and keep them connected as much as possible, and then you think in terms, this is one of the phrases that we use in training, is you think in terms of next steps, which isn't hard for most people if they've been around for very long on Sunday, to realize that that's a code word around here for what is coming next, what you need to do next in order to continue your walk with God and your walk in community.
Yeah.
So as long as you're doing those things, all the rest really isn't that difficult. Life group leadership, we don't set a really high bar because we believe the most important thing is community. And out of that, I don't want to say easily, but fairly, fairly automatically, maybe is a better word, flows
Organically?
maybe organically,
Often.
or flows a shepherding process
Right.
that isn't heavy or burdensome. It's actually desirable
And natural and makes sense, and you want to, and you've got the relationships, and they want to.
because you're not we tell people it's kind of a pastoral role, but it's not in the sense of you're over somebody wanting to direct them. It's pastoral in the sense of you want to care, which is truly what
Right.
pastoral boils down to. And so you end up when you spend time with people, you end up caring for them.
Yeah. One of the things we in the Next Steps videos, and we just redid another version of the Next Steps videos, and you know this. We talk about the goal of it is to care for one another well. Care for one another well is the thing, and and we want group meetings to look a certain way. We want them to pray. We want them to be about the word. We want them to be about relationships, and that life group meetings isn't a great word for that, but life groups getting together involve those things, and then the caring for one another well part is natural and easy when you're with people. Yeah. What do you think have been the largest challenges in making life groups happen, apart from I'm going to throw this in there real quick, apart from some structural changes that you came into life groups, and then we all of a sudden were like, hey, looks like we're going to go multi-site, looks like we're also going to start regeneration recovery, oh yeah, and then also re-engage in the marriage ministry. Apart from programmatic things that have been a piece of keeping us from developing life groups as well as the trajectory had started, what have been the hardest parts of that, whether it's a personal thing that you hear from people's hesitation to whatever the case might be? What are some of the biggest challenges in developing life groups?
The first one, and this will sound planned, but okay, let it sound that way, is passivity, which plays into what we've said many times, what you've said many times, which is community doesn't just happen.
Right.
You have to seek it out.
Right.
You have to search for it. You have to give yourself to it. A lot of people have expressed interest. I'd like to join a life group.
A lot of people like checking those boxes.
But when I have the conversation with them, well, there's only one specific time of one specific day of one specific era that I can be a part of a life group. Or it's, well, I need all of these things to fit. Or I can throw out, hey, how about you be a part of starting a new group? And it needs a leader. And then it's like, well, I'm not sure. So there's passivity in the sense of, if you just have a group that you can drop me in, and maybe if it just all works out. That's not an attack on any one person, because that's lots of people, and that's kind of the default position.
Sure.
Is if you make it all happen, then maybe I'll show up.
Yeah.
And that's not what life groups do. That's going to happen on Sunday morning, and I think that's why we have a lot more participation on Sunday morning than we do in life groups throughout the week, because we're going to make it happen, because it's community it's focused on people who aren't part of church, and we want to provide this experience for you to come to and be a part of. But life groups aren't that way. It has to be initiated by a group of people that care enough to get together and to do the work. So passivity is the biggest struggle. The second struggle has been finding people willing to commit to leadership. Again, it's not a high bar, but sometimes people think it is. That's why we challenge as many people as possible, come be a part of leadership life group, so you can have all the information in order to make the decision. Don't make the decision first.
That's right.
We've got 2 or 3 people or couples that are going to be a part of this group, and I said, you don't have to commit to leading a life group.
Right.
Commit to this leadership life group for 6 weeks, and then at the end of that, then you can have all the information in order to pray and see if God would have you do something. Because we've had plenty of people who weren't real sure that once they went through leadership life group, they're like, oh wait, we can make this happen.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we come from. You have to have a lot of patience, and you also have to ask for a lot of patience, because right now we've got 15 to 20 people that would love to be a part of a group,
right,
and no great group to place them in because of a lack of leaders or not having groups on the right days or nights that are need to go.
Yeah.
However, that being said, we got some bright spots. This leadership life group's a bright spot. Talking to somebody this week about perhaps starting a daytime group for ladies. That's been a need, and so we've got some things that it appears that God's working. So
good stuff. Good stuff. We end on a couple questions like this. What are you excited or encouraged about And what's God teaching you lately, in whatever order?
Excited, encouraged about. I've said to myself, to my family especially, we've been a part of several congregations. We've been a part of ministry in several different contexts.
Yeah.
And the best thing that we can take that we have benefited from, let's say it that way, that we have benefited from at FCC is the culture of openness and vulnerability and accountability, without this heavy dose, which we have previously experienced in other contexts, of shame and judgment. In fact, my region commencement testimony was focused on judgmentalism because I come out of such a culture growing up. My parents were not nearly as caught up in that in a lot of respects as the church and organization as a whole, but just a lot of judgmentalism.
It's the waters in which you all swam
And
in that
legalism.
sense. Yeah.
So that's what have convinced us when we typically wouldn't have envisioned ourselves being at First Christian Church necessarily, because it wasn't the organization that we'd come out of, but the atmosphere and the culture that's been created, and the elders and pastors and everybody has given themselves to, that's been a breath of fresh air for us.
Cool.
So that's been wonderful. Excited that in the craziness of culture and especially American culture right now, I do not identify in any of the categories that lots of other people identify with. And while if I dwell on it too long, I can get very frustrated. But if I step back and through prayer and through scripture, and I believe through God's Spirit, I'm figuring out that it's only going to get worse, but the church is only going to have a better place to stand. It doesn't mean every Christian's going to end up there, but the church is going to have a better place to stand to say, hey, we value these things. The wider culture is going to do what it's going to do, but we are going to value and we're going to have a chance to show kindness and love to people. So that's exciting to me, even though it's very, very scary. And God is teaching me right now that I need to boil things down to some very basics and live my life about just 2 or 3 things that matter. And it's amazing how middle age gives you different perspective.
Good stuff.
I was talking with a friend Saturday morning, and he said, I used to care about stuff, and I just don't really care about stuff anymore. And I said, I'm right there with you. Most of the stuff I care about is really just for my kids. I want my kids to have certain things and not have college debt. Sorry about that one, but yeah. So that's kind of where I am in my mid-40s.
Good stuff. Thank you for joining us for Coffee Convos.
It's been wonderful. I'm glad to have the chance.
Thank you for joining us, Coffee Convos. Glad you're with us. Good to hear about the work of God in your life, and especially in life groups here at First Christian. And if you're not yet in a life group, what are you doing? What are you doing?
It's the best year ever. Let's do it.
Join us next time for Coffee Convos. And join a life group.